It's 4:01 a.m. Everything goes silent, like somebody flipped a switch. We're at 19,200 feet on the east side of Mount Aconcagua, the highest mountain in the world outside of Asia, just shy of 23,000 feet. We're at 19,200 feet at high camp, waiting for our opportunity for summit day. We've been hunkered down in this two-man tent, my teammate and I, for 3 days. 30 below zero, 75 mile an hour winds. There was a group of Italian climbers that just months ago had died in this exact same spot. They froze to death. And we were waiting for our shot. We'd been on the mountain for 12 days. And finally, you couldn't hear anything but my chest and my heart pounding. I heard a little pfft in the guide tent just outside, and I knew that meant one thing, that it was time to make our bid for the summit. I remember thinking, oh shit. Like, I'm not ready for this. Please, God, give me another day. I'd had severe altitude sickness. I thought I was having the beginnings of cerebral edema, which is swelling of the brain, which has killed many people on this mountain. But it was time. The entire year of training had led to this. So we get out of the tent, we start to suit up, and I'm looking into a sea of stars. And there's no time to relish the beauty because time is precious. We've got 3,000 feet to climb and a small window to get there because the wind is treacherous on this part of the mountain. We begin our climb, and once again, my altitude sickness is flaring up. And I notice my mind starting to slip onto the backside, telling myself, what were you thinking? This is not a good idea. You could die on this mountain. And as we continued up the mountain, the team broke into two. The 5 remaining guys and me. 3 other guys had to bail several days earlier because of complications. As the distance began to widen, I began to feel more and more alone. Who was I kidding? I was no mountain man. What the hell was I thinking? As I continue to climb, I feel my mood and my energy begin to sink. Eventually, the team gets so far ahead, my negative thinking jumps in and starts saying, you got no business being here. You are never going to make this, which made all of it seem even darker. Finally, they're about a mile ahead, and I notice a gentleman walking, trying to get around me on the trail. And he's wearing a big red down suit, speaking German with his climbing partner. And I have a guide with me. One of the guys is with me, Rollo. But as this German man and his partner go ahead of me, I think, thank God, if somebody my speed, I can actually maybe trail him and keep him in sight. So I had a climbing buddy. I didn't feel quite so alone. As we continue, we reach the most treacherous part of the climb, which is a windy traverse. The windy traverse is a 45-degree pitch and a 1,000-foot drop straight to the right. There's no margin for error, there's no ropes, there's no oxygen, nothing to hold on to. You just have to make every step count. It's about a 6-inch wide lip that you have to walk up along, and this is where many people have fallen off the mountain. As I watch the German climber, the wind begins to pick up and it starts to snow. Luckily, his suit is red, so I can see him easily. About 25 feet in front of me, I notice something shifts with his balance. And I watch him as his crampon, his cleat on his shoe, catches his down suit. And he trips, and he bounces, hitting a rock. And he tumbled over the side like a rag doll until his body hit the ice 1,000 foot below. And as I stood there, I began thinking about who this man was and was he okay? And it was clear that he wasn't. And as I looked at him, I saw myself. I saw my own face. I saw me laying there. And I asked, have I done what I came here to do? Have I become who I came to be in this life? And in that moment, it was crystal clear to me that the answer was no. That moment, 19,200 feet, changed my life. I realized that I was successful, that I was achieving, but I wasn't listening to a part of me. There was a part of me dying to get out. And it was just below the surface, but I had somehow suppressed it. And this moment in Argentina had woken it up. That same power, that same aliveness is in you right now. And it's dying to get out. And I want to share with you a question that has the power to coax it, regardless of your level of success. And that is this. What's your big thing? You know. That thing. It's the thing that you've longed to do but maybe have never fully acknowledged. Maybe you've put it on the back burner, putting it off into retirement or a time when you have more of something or less of something, less responsibility, more freedom, more time. We all have good reasons, but everybody has a big thing. And a big thing is more than just a goal. A big thing is a mountaintop daring you to touch it. There are 7 core distinctions of a big thing. Number 1, you deeply, heart and soul, want it. It's not somebody else's good idea. It's not something you think you should do. It's something you long to do. Now, if you're like most people, you might think, I've already done lots of big things. And in this room, I already know that's true. You have. But many people come to my office looking for something that's going to take them from already being at the top of their game to a new level. How do you take a world champion, an icon in a sport, and take them to a new level of inspiration, excitement, to something they felt only in their 20s? I think deep down, many of us long to feel that passion that we felt when we didn't know any better, when we were first in maybe the business we're in, or when we were younger. Your big thing has a doorway to aliveness like nothing else can. First of the 7s is you want it. You deeply want it. Second thing is scares you. Just considering it might have you question your sanity. If it doesn't scare you, it's not a big thing. Or at some point, it will scare you. Number 3, you may think at some point it's impossible. The people that I sit with on a daily basis at my office in Aspen, probably like many of you, they're crazy enough to think they can change the world. So their big thing inherently is seen by many as impossible. Number 4, the how may elude you. For most people, this is why they don't even consider their big thing. They don't even let themselves go down that road because they can't see how to do it. For many people, what they can't see is, how do I manage my current life and actually do that thing, because they're not the same thing. So most people push it off. They say, you know what, when I got more time, when my kids are grown, then I'll do it. But there's a cost. Because your soul doesn't give a rat's ass about your mind's little story about how important you are. It longs to create. It has ideas of what it wants to do. Are you listening? Number 5, you can't do it alone. You need help. Now, all of you in here probably run businesses or own businesses, so you know you can't do anything alone. Anybody who's done anything worthwhile knows it takes a team, it takes people, it takes support. But if you can do it yourself, it ain't a big thing. 6th is, you can't get there by being the person you are today. You must transform who you are in order to realize your big thing. That doesn't mean you're not enough, you're not perfect as you are today. It actually means you're pretending to be someone who's actually smaller than what you're truly capable of, which is one of the biggest reasons to do a big thing. A big thing will require you to change your self-identity. Some of you maybe had the experience where you were a great project manager and you ran a part of the business, and then you jumped up to being the CEO or maybe running the whole company. To make that transition, sometimes we know what we need to do, like delegate and to empower others rather than us doing all the work, but yet sometimes we don't do it. Why is that? Why don't we do the things we know we need to do? Number one reason, self-identity. If my self-identity is not matched with the outcome that I'm wanting to create and the experience I want, I'm going to feel like a fraud or an imposter. And I may numb that or ignore it, but eventually it will find its way in the company. And that's dangerous. So it's a simple thing, a mindset and a way of being upgrade, and we're going to talk about that in just a minute. How you can make a shift just like that, regardless of where you are in a company or in your life. Finally, number 7 of markers of a big thing, it must serve others than just you. You want it, scares the hell out of you. You likely think it may be impossible. The how, the full how eludes you. You can't do it alone. You must transform in order to realize it, and it serves others. Unless it's all 7, it's not a big thing. May be an important goal, and maybe you should do it. A lot of people ask me, they're like, Jeff, how do you work with people? Why do you have the track record you have with people who are already very successful? And I say, it's very simple. You're not going to like my answer. I help them find out their big thing, which is not easy for people who are really busy to do. You get it, right? Who's sitting around going, what's my big thing? But you see, we get so friggin' busy in our lives. There's so much responsibility, so much distraction that's hurled at us. It's easy to get hypnotized. We think that this is it. And we get what I call small vision syndrome. Small vision syndrome is focusing more on current circumstances and what is today, rather than consciously creating the future that I desire. As kids, we're natural dreamers. But as we get older and as we get bigger and more responsibility, it's easy to slip into this robotic focus on what is rather than what can be. Now, y'all are a bunch of doers, so you know how to get shit done, right? So it's not enough to just, think and inspire and imagine the future. Obviously, it takes action. But what we're going to explore today is what the big thing can give you, is it can give you an access point into who you are in your future. I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself. There was a young man who came to my office a while back. Pretty well-known guy. He was a former Olympian, won a bronze medal in the 2002 Olympic Games. He had cancer of the liver and needed a life-changing transplant, which he got in 2000. And after he got it, he trained, and he was the first ever transplant to win a medal at the Olympics. Very inspiring story, and he'd been on MSNBC and gotten lots of notoriety, and people have known him. But he's sitting in my office, and he's got a career in real estate. But I ask him, what's your big thing? He's like, I don't know. I'm like, well, what is it that you're really wanting? What are you longing to do? What is the thing, you really want to do? And it was difficult for him to answer because he was really focused on building his company, his real estate firm. And sharp gentleman, but had not, was not overly competitive at that point. He was just kind of new in his career. And as we explored this question, he said, Jeff, I want to help people that are on the wait list for an organ donation. I said, well, how many? And we got down to the numbers, and he said, I want to save 5 people a week per year, 5 more people a week per year. And as we looked at numbers, we deduced, and he deduced based on his research, that if he could increase the organ designation on people's driver's licenses across the United States, that would represent that change, 5 people per week, per year. And he was very excited about that. And so we wrote this up, 5 people a week saved by 2035. And as we started talking about it, he got tears in his eyes. And he said, Jeff, that's not it. I'm like, what is it? He said, I want to eliminate the wait list altogether. He goes, but that's batshit crazy. It's not possible. I said, says who? Is that what you want? He said, yes, that's absolutely what I want. So he made plans in his organization called Donor Dudes, which is now the Chris Klug Foundation, to do an education drive to help increase the donorship and the designation of driver's license, to increase it. And within 5 years, not 10, in 5 years, he hit his mark, and it was saving 5 people a day, not 5 people a week. And he's on track to hitting it and eliminating. He's not there yet. It is an audacious goal. He is one of the top brokers in Aspen, Colorado. I haven't checked his totals this year, but he's well over 100 million. And that is nowhere near where he was at the time. And my conversation with him in the office had nothing to do with business. But what he woke up in clarifying his big thing was now alive everywhere. In his marriage, in his health, in his business. This is the gift our big thing is trying to give us. And just because you have a big thing doesn't mean that's meant to be your career. That's not his career. That is his passion, that is his big thing, but it's not where he makes his money. Some people do make their money in their big thing. So, I want to share a couple principles from my book that I'm giving you all a copy of, and everything I'm talking about you can find in the book, including these notes, so just so you know, you don't need to keep track of it. When you're clear on what your big thing is, have the courage to say yes. And as I talk about in the book, have the courage to build your world around your big thing, not the opposite. Most people try to stuff their big thing into an already busy life. And you can imagine what that leads to. And it doesn't always mean that you have to, leave the country and go to an ashram and completely disrupt your life. Quite the opposite. Sometimes saying yes to your big thing means you got to get the business ready to sell, or that you actually need to repair your marriage and make sure that what's really important is founded on some power and groundedness. So, choosing your big thing and going all in, I got one of the greatest stories that continues to inspire me to this day. Many years ago, I was a professional actor in Hollywood. And I had the fortune of hosting a kid show for Nickelodeon at Universal Studios called You Pick Nick. And my co-host and I, we would do the show 4 times a day in front of about 2,500 people, cameras, the whole thing. It was a big deal there, and it was lots of fun. And one particular day, right before the show goes on, the door on the dressing room knocks, and it's my co-host. And he's like, Jeff, I don't know what to do. I need your help. And I'm like, what is it? And he's like, I just got offered Smokey Joe's Cafe on Broadway. This was his dream job. This was his thing he'd always wanted, was to have a lead in a Broadway musical. I'm like, I don't get it. This is one of your biggest things that you want to do in your life. Why is this a problem? He's like, I have to leave in 48 hours and leave pilot season in order to do it. So just to let you in, my co-host had not booked any major work. He had been working to get an agent so that he could audition for pilots, which are new potential shows in Hollywood. And even pilots don't guarantee you shows. But he'd just gotten in position to be able to audition. And he would have to leave that now to go to New York City for his dream job that paid great money, and he wasn't making great money. And he had a decision to make. He's like, what do I do? Do I go do this or do I stay and pursue what I really want, which is a sitcom? And so I had him pause and I said, all right, what's your big thing? What is it that you're really after? What's the North Star? What's the thing you really want? He's like, I want to be the next Flip Wilson of television. I want to bring variety type comedy back to modern day television. And I said, all right. So close your eyes. I want you to go into the future. And I led him in a little visualization. I said, I want you to see yourself 5 years from now on the CBS lot. See yourself on the set of your own show. Feel the lights on your face and feel the audience warm and laughing and right in front of you. I said, now imagine you're at the back of that theater watching yourself tape your own show. I said, I want you to look at you. Look at you, the man, the person you are. What's unique about that guy? I said, just focus on him. Who is he being? What quality is he exuding? How is he showing up? And so his eyes were closed, and all of a sudden, he just starts to smile. I said, what? He's like, I know what I need to do. His agent was livid. His managers were pissed. His friends all thought he was crazy because he passed up a sure thing. He was told he was going to be blackballed, that he would never work on Broadway again. This was his one shot, and if he didn't take it, they would never let him back in. So he stays home. A couple months later, he does a little teeny tiny pilot for VH1 called Vinyl Justice, where he was, pitching in these music videos. And it was only 2 episodes. And a producer from England who was in town saw this 2 a.m. Airing on VH1 and said, you know what, we should bring this guy in. He's kind of funny. So they bring him in for this new show they were going to put up on ABC. They liked him, they thought he was funny, but they weren't sure because they didn't want to take a chance on an unknown. They decided to bring him back to network for testing, and they decided to take a chance. And 6 months later, everybody in the world knew the name Wayne Brady. And what's so amazing about Wayne is that he was willing to pass up a sure thing for the shot at his big thing. But what's interesting to note about this story, he was doing all the things he needed to do. But when he stopped, got clear on his big thing, and he really saw the future Wayne, who he was being, how he showed up, those qualities. When he connected with that, he knew exactly what the right move was to make. When I had him close his eyes, he saw the guy that already did it. And that guy told him what to do. The future Wayne was alive in him at the same time, but he was pretending. He thought he needed to become rich, famous, have network validation. He thought he needed that before he could be that guy. But he decided to be it right then. He decided to be the gutsy, ballsy comedian that he is in his life right then. And everything changed. Which leads us to one of the core principles of my book, The Big Thing Effect. And that is this. One of the important elements of realizing your big thing is shifting your way of being. Most of us think we need something in order to be the person we really want to be. We think we need more money to be totally free and independent, or we think we need a relationship in order to experience deep and lasting love. But those qualities are in us now, and we're making excuses. We're pretending to be smaller versions of ourselves today because we think we need more in order to be, which is not true. And this is one of the key principles of how I coach people that are already at the top of their game. So I met a woman, I don't know how many years ago, maybe 7 years ago now. Dana came to me. She was also a sales professional. And her big thing was to make $15 million in real estate. I know for most people in this room, that's a small amount. But for her, it represented more than she'd done in 10 years of her entire career combined in real estate. She said, I want to do 15 million. That's my big thing. I'm like, all right, okay. And as I began to understand what she was working through in her business, she began to share how she was showing up in her business. And she was being timid. She was a pleaser. She was really concerned with what her clients thought of her. She was more concerned about their opinion of her than she was at truly serving them, which looked like her being Molly Milquetoast and being nice, but not asking for the sale, not getting listing agreements signed. And so I asked her, I said, Dana, who would you have to be to do 15 million? Who you're being now is apologetic, needy, more focused on others' opinions of you. How would you have to show up? And so we began to explore how she'd have to show up. She said, Jeff, I need to be direct. I need to actually be vulnerable. I need to be okay with my own fear of what they think and just let that be there and still ask the questions I need to ask. She said, and you know what else I'd have to do? I'd have to actually engage in consistent, excellent self-care because I don't. When my business is down, I treat myself like crap and I don't take care of myself. And I know no one in here can relate to that. So she pinpointed about 4 things about how she was showing up in her world that would need to change, and we wrote it down and we gave it a name. And she called it Dynamite. There was Milquetoast Molly, which is how she was showing up, being nice, telling people what they want to hear, not asking for the sale, not being direct, not really serving them, more focused on their opinions and her fears than really serving. Now she was committed to serving the people across from her, even if it scared her. It wasn't easy, but she began operating from this new way of being. But in short order, things began to shift. People began to notice her. Other brokers wanted to partner with her. She started getting a higher level clientele, and she started to have something that she said she'd never had, which was confidence. Something else happened. She said, I met someone, and I had been out of a relationship for a long time. She developed a relationship, and she was actually having success in relationship in a way that she hadn't. Being Dynamite didn't just start to impact her business, it began to impact her life. 12 months later, she hit her goal of 15 million. And for her, that was a miracle. But the miracle was yet to come. Because this last year, Dana cleared 100 million in her business. And she says it's because of Dynamite. You see, she got clear on who she needed to be. We coached her into being that version of herself. And then it transformed her relationships, transformed her business. And it doesn't just take her to 15 million, it took her to over 100 million. Now I know it's not just about numbers, but she has a completely different life. She lives in Steamboat Springs with her now husband and their blended families. And she said none of this would have been possible without Dynamite. I want to share with you a very simple 4-step process that you can write down right now to help you in any challenge that you're in or any goal, period. Now, this is great for your big thing, but you don't even have to apply it to your big thing. There are 4 elements that contribute to make your way of being. Right? So there's what you do, right, in your world, but then there's who you be. That's that unique essence, the unique way you show up, right? The quality coming off of you, the unique way that you show up. That's what we're talking about, and you can shift it on a dime. If you're ever pissed, if you're ever frustrated, if you're ever in a challenge, 9 times out of 10, the reason you're upset is you're not being who you want to be. I remember years ago, I worked at one of my side jobs during Hollywood was working at a car dealership. And I was at a crossroads. I did not know whether I should really keep going with acting or if I should do coaching, because I had a part-time coaching business at that time. This would have been the late 90s. And I remember just being so stymied up in my head and I had hives. I was so freaked out. Maybe it's because of all the coffee I drank at the dealership. I don't know. But I'm like, what do I do? What do I do? I have no clue what I'm going to do in my life. And I could not see the future. I was like, what is the job? What am I meant to do? Do I keep going in Hollywood? Do I become a coach? Or do I go into sales? I'm told that I've got great qualities for sales. No matter what I did, I just went further and further into frustration. And finally, one day, I was daydreaming and imagining my future, and I could not see the career I was in, but I could see me. And when I saw that future version of myself, which looked like 10 years in the future, that guy was generous. He was buying people dinner. He was generous with his advice. And I'm like, that's who I want to be. But I was 60 grand in debt. I didn't have any, I lived in a 400 square foot apartment. I did my dishes in the bathtub. Good for the environment, not good for my dating life, or sex life for that matter. Pretty much the same, exactly the same. What am I saying? I could see the future me. And I'm like, I want to be that guy. And I thought to myself, wait a minute, maybe I'm asking the wrong question. Maybe I don't need to figure out what I'm going to do. Maybe I need to figure out who I need to be. And so I got a snapshot in my mind of that future Jeff. He was generous. He took excellent care of himself. He cultivated his intuition, and he helped people. He encouraged people to go for their big thing. And he was playful and humorous. Those were 4 things that I was not doing at the dealership. And so my game was, I'm going to bring that dude, and I'm going to be him here now. I don't know what I'm doing 10 years from now, but I know who I am being. I know that guy. I'm going to be him now. Maybe he can figure this shit out. Changed my life. I fell in love with that shitty job. I'm not kidding. I fell in love. I loved it. Friday nights became stand-up night, and I would do impersonations of all the crazy people that worked there. I had people come in and offer to hire me. They're like, I want you to come work for for Revolution Studios. You'd be a great production manager. You should be my agent assistant. People wanted to hire me. But I was having so much fun that I quickly got clear on what I really wanted. And I adjusted my sights, and within a couple of months, I was out of the dealership. But I didn't get there by trying to figure out what to do. I got there by asking the question, who do I need to be? So the 4 things I mentioned, you can write them down, but they're in the book that I gave you a copy of. 4 things that can contribute to help create your way of being. Number 1, your focus. The single most important thing that you focus on will evoke and pull a certain part of you out. So when I sat with Dana, we said, what does Dana focus on that you haven't been focused on? So she's like, old Dana was focused on pleasing people. Dynamite is focused on serving people. So I had to write that down. She was focused on serving. Second thing is thought or belief. What is the core belief of the way of being you need to have in order to do your big thing? So when I was looking at the future Jeff, what did he focus on? He focused on his intuition. He focused on how to help others. And the thought that he was operating from is, I am a gift. Now this is me looking at me in the future and doing this kind of character study to help me now today to find the breakthrough. So right now, ask yourself, no matter how successful, no matter where you are in the longevity of your business, your company, your career, your life, if there's an objective you're up to, or if there's a challenge you're in, ask yourself, who do I need to be in order to create the solutions I want? You'll get a different answer. So these 4 things Focus, thought, quality, habit. So a way of being has a very specific focus. So you can ask yourself, in my future, where I've already solved this problem, what's the one thing I'm totally focused on? Then listen to your own answer. It's probably something different that you're focusing on now. For many people that are very intelligent, they focus on what's wrong because you're all about fixing. But very often the thing you got to focus on is on what you're doing well so that you can double down on it and increase what can really make the difference. The thought. So how many of you know who Prime is? Coach Prime for Colorado Buffaloes. I've been following him since the 90s. I love him, I'm grew up in the 70s and 80s, but I loved him as an athlete because he operates from a decision. In the 90s, he created prime time. And he decided who that guy was. He decided what he focused on. He decided on what he thought or believed. He decided the quality that he wanted to feel, and he decided the kind of habits and how he showed up. He decided it and gave it a name and called it Prime. And then he came out and delivered that. It wasn't about anybody else's opinion. If you've heard him in his recent tweets, he's like, I don't have time for your opinions. I'm too focused on what I perceive of myself than I am worrying about what you perceive of me. So this is what I lay out in the book is how do you do that? How do you systematically explode your way of being and genuinely bring a part of you that you've been longing to bring forward even if you didn't know it? This is how you do it. So you take the goal that you want or you take your big thing and you see the outcome of it and you ask yourself, who would I need to be to realize that? What would I need to focus on? Write that down. What would I have to think? What thought would I have to believe or would I have to operate from? Here's what's tricky in the mindset world. Many people are trying to believe that what they want is possible, but it's not necessary. You don't have to believe you can do it. You have to be willing to choose it. You have to be willing to operate from a thought. You don't have to believe it. Let me give you an example. On the side of the mountain, just before the story that I told you before, one of my teammates, who was 67 years young at the time, Dennis, just before summit day says, well, me boy, you think you're gonna make it? And I thought to myself, what a dumbass question. And I don't know why, I'm like literally I snapped. It's probably because I hadn't slept at all in 14 days at that point on the mountain. I said, Dennis, and I couldn't believe these words were coming out of me. I've got no business worrying about whether or not if I'm gonna make it. That's an opinion, mine. My opinion of whether or not I think I'm gonna make it. I said, Dennis, I'm just focused on my choice to make it to the top and back safely. And I'm going to focus on that. I'm not going to focus on, do I think I'm going to make it today? And I had this epiphany. This is why I get so close. I get to 19,200 feet beneath my goals in my life, but never made it all the way to the top. Because I was so worried about, can I make it? Do I deserve to make it? Is it possible to make it? I was trying to believe that it was possible. But in that moment, I realized I need to choose it. I need to operate from the thought, I'm choosing to get to the top and back safely. I could actualize that. I could action that. I could take actions in alignment with that, even if I didn't believe it. One step at a time. That's how I made my way across the windy traverse to the top of the mountain. And it wasn't about reaching the destination. It's because I had become the man I longed to be. I had created a new way of being in my prep for that climb. And standing on the top of Aconcagua, looking around 360 at the world and the blanket of clouds beneath me, I realized that I had become that. And it was then that I realized what I'd been longing for so much in my life, which was to take this message that you are so much more than you think, and that you're more than your career, and that you have a big thing in you. And the people that I have coached have not only done it, but It's changed their life and their marriages and their health. I've had people, incredible stories you'll read about in that book. Shifting your way of being is powerful. These 4 questions will help you. They're in the book too. One last story is a woman named Julia. And Julia started working with me, and then she got a diagnosis. She found out that she had stage 4 lung cancer. If any of you know, that is what most people call a death sentence. She was told to get her affairs in order. She was scared. She was a little bit undisciplined. She wasn't, she's like, Jeff, I can't, I'm not the kind of person that just eats potatoes and nothing else, or does some of the wacky things that these places want me to do to change my health. And I said, well, what's the goal here? What's your big thing? And she said, I want to live. I said, well, let's get a picture of that. What does that look like? And she described the life she wanted to live and the difference that she wanted to make. And I said, all right, who do you need to be? Who's that version of you? Let's describe her. And we wrote it down. I said, what is she focused on? And she said, she's focused on life. She's focused on living. Because what she was previously focused on was death. She didn't know it, but she was focused on all the things that were wrong with her. She was diagnosed with bipolar disorder. She had dealt with depression. Her family had disowned her. She'd actually been successful in business, but she'd kept this all on the down low, and she judged herself. And who she was being was hiding from the world. Here she sat with a diagnosis, and I said, look, Julia, we can't control what happens to you. I can't promise you that this is what it's gonna mean externally, but this could give you your life back. And she saw who she needed to be to kick cancer. It wasn't a guarantee she was gonna kick it, but she saw who she needed to be, what she'd have to focus on, the core thoughts she'd have to operate from, the quality of being, which for her was joy, that she would have to feel and cultivate consistently, and the habit. And the habit was consistently choosing life. She began to focus on being this, which helped her to see things she wasn't seeing. She made complete changes. She went to Mexico. She did all these alternative things. She took an experimental drug. She did all these things that she couldn't have chosen to do before because she didn't see them. She shifted her way of being instantly and began to see different actions in front of her. She started showing up differently. And I'm happy to report, 8 years later, her cancer is in remission. Doctors would call that a miracle. I can't begin to tell you, I can't explain it. All I can tell you, she shifted her way of being. She made that her focus. And then she had to move her tushy. She had to do the action, right? Well, most of us know what we need to do, but we don't do it. Why? Who we're being. That can be changed in a nanosecond. This is a very simple way to do it. Ask yourself, who do I need to be to make it through this challenge? Who do I need to be to realize that big thing? So my only request is if you know of anybody that needs to hear this message, that you would come chat with me about it and try to find a way for me to get in front of them or those people. I want to give you these books as my gift to you. I'll be here for the next couple of days to be helpful any way that I can. But here's to you, not only clarifying your big thing, but having the courage to say yes. Thank you.